Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up on the chart here, the show times, same as always, 5:30 for APB, ARCS, KUAC 9.4, 5:30 also, 360 North, 7:30, and Alaska Public Media, 5 a.m. the following morning, and uploaded every evening on YouTube. And for advisories here for tonight, we've got the yellow painted area here in the interior. That's a freezing rain advisory out again for overnight tonight. Areas of freezing rain possible in all of these zones there from the greater Galena area right on up into the Yukon Flats. And then out to the west, there's a high wind warning tonight for St. Lawrence Island on up into the Bering Strait, and also along the coast here for south winds, south to southeast, anywhere from 35 to 40 miles an hour with gusts above 60. Also high surf advisories for St. Lawrence Island here and the Bering Strait coastline also throughout tonight. And high surf advisory here extends along the south coast of the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, we've got a high wind warning out for late tonight and tomorrow here for the central Aleutians for gusts possibly over 80 miles per hour. As a pretty intense storm rolls into the area, but yesterday we had a big blowout here over the far western Bering Sea near the Komodorskis, kind of swinging down like that, and then a good front out here with a lot of precipitation and wind with that feature moving mostly up to the north, but pushing eastward. Again, strong high pressure here over the eastern interior areas, gradually giving way. You can see that front pushed into the interior here, weakened considerably, held together enough to keep areas of light precipitation going from Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, right up to the Arctic coast there, breaking out behind that, and showery, windy conditions from the northwest coast up there all the way back down to the Pribilof Islands, and a break with a few scattered showers over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, and then the frontal boundary there associated with the next big storm developing system. They'll be rolling into the Bering Sea this evening and tonight. Pretty dry day here, nice over the southeast coast, or the southeast coast, the Panhandle. And for today, again, things clearing out, the calm before the storm over the eastern Aleutians, and the winds still pretty brisk earlier today for the Pribilof, so some showers that should be ending, and the winds coming down this evening a little bit. And on the chart today, there's that next storm out here, 973 millibars, moving up into the Aleutians, and the shower activity from the Pribilof, winds gusting 40 miles an hour there and up to 50 miles an hour or more through the St. Lawrence Island, and again, gusts above 60 miles an hour possible from there all the way up to the northwest coast and the Chukchi Sea for tonight, with a wind warning out and the front pushing inland here with the precipitation, of course, mostly in the form of rain along the North Gulf Coast, but liquid water equivalents, Nikolai picked up about a third or a quarter of an inch today, Iliamna down there about a half an inch, and Igigik earlier on. Most of that fell early before the system pulled eastward. They had about 2/3 of an inch, and Wales had 3/4 of an inch of precipitation. With that, more showery, pretty gusty winds, as I mentioned here, from the Chukchi Sea back into the northern Bering Sea, breaking out here. And again, the nice conditions over the Panhandle, really up through the eastern interior as well. And for tonight, again, gales and storm warnings will be mostly storm warnings here as this low pulls into about that position. So wind and rain on the increase for the Alaska Peninsula on up to the Pribilofs again after coming down this evening. It'll be heading back up late tonight and into early tomorrow. Still some lingering moisture here out to the west, but nothing too terribly heavy. And this boundary fading away, but it doesn't vanish completely. We still have a chance of rain for the North Gulf Coast, a little bit into Prince William Sound, and a mixture of conditions, but it'll be on the light side there along the trough axis right up to that low center. Over the eastern North Slope in the Brooks Range area on out to the Arctic coast, with a variably cloudy pattern here over the interior, mostly mid and high level clouds into the Copper River Basin, and mostly cloudy for the southeast coast, but remaining dry. Winds will stay light. All the shower activity will be off the coast, although some of that could slip on up into Yakutat. And then for tomorrow, the storm warnings for the central Aleutians turn into hurricane force wind warnings with 65-knot winds in the forecast there, but the low center pulling northeastward, so gradually diminishing into the afternoon, but quite strong winds with rain, Alaska Peninsula back to the eastern Aleutians, a lot of winds coming in, storm force winds here along the southwest coast and possibly into western Bristol Bay as well. Southwest of Kodiak Island, winds on the increase, but pretty light wind conditions there from Kodiak across the Gulf of Alaska. Not much of a gradient, very weak low in this position, but southeast flow keeping a chance of rain, mostly along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound, with maybe some showers over toward Cordova, possibly Valdez, and then still scattered precipitation along that trough all the way up to the central Arctic coast. Will be mixed. Again, areas of freezing rain tonight there through those shaded areas of the interior. And partly sunny day tomorrow for the Panhandle with light winds. Same thing here over the eastern interior, variably cloudy conditions. And then behind that trough on the other side, not too bad, but the winds beginning to increase here across especially the Yukon Delta. But winds less than today from the Seward Peninsula up to the Chukchi Sea, and not too bad on the western Arctic coast there. But good west-northwest winds, definitely gale and storm force winds coming in around the backside of that 950 millibar low that pulls up quite close to the Pribilofs by tomorrow afternoon. And then on Monday, that lifts north of the St. Paul Island area and weakens a little bit there to 956 millibars, but the gradient not as tight as it was. So even though it only drops about or rises a few millibars, the gradient less. So definitely the hurricane force wind warnings are gone, but still quite windy here, St. Lawrence Island along the southwest coast. The front pushing eastward in strong jet kind of elongates it and stretches it out. So much weaker here on Monday, but good for gusty winds and rain for Kodiak and kind of areas of precipitation back across the southwest coast. Partly to mostly cloudy over the interior and more lines on the chart here, so a little bit more wind through the interior, but generally dry. Could see some rain or snow on the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range, maybe the Alaska Range, and that's about it. Arctic coast dry, eastern interior dry, variably cloudy, down to the Copper River Basin, even into, say, the Matanuska Valley, Palmer, Wasilla, Talkeetna. Could see some sun on Monday, and more clouds, chance of showers to the Kenai Peninsula. And again, the shower activity staying mostly to the west of the Panhandle, but the south coast there could pick up a few showers, possibly in the afternoon. Otherwise, winds light and conditions pretty good, a lot of VFR. For the temperatures down that way this afternoon, mostly in the 40s, 47 at Klawock to 43 at the state capital, Skagway at 50. 46 at Yakutat, 45 in Cordova, Valdez 39 degrees, and a 27 there at Glen Ellen with temperatures ranging from 21 at Northway to about 30 over at Fairbanks, and then back down to 24 at Tanana. Up to the north, Fort Yukon, 14 degrees, but 28 over at Bettles. 30 degrees in Anaktuvuk, and upper 20s on the eastern Arctic coast to mid to upper 30s from Barrow all the way down to Cape Lisburne, where they reported 41. Upper 30s here for Kotzebue, Noatak Valley, and the Seward Peninsula, with Wales and Savunga both up to 41, as well as Unalakleet and Ammonich. Otherwise, McGrath saw 36, warming to 42 down the river there at Bethel, and lower 40s along the southwest coast. Mid 40s for the Pribilofs, central Aleutians, colder air sweeping in out west, bringing it down to 39 at Shimia, but 47 at Unalaska, upper 40s here, Alaska Peninsula on up into Bristol Bay, Homer 53, and Kodiak at 50. For the lows tonight, teens and 20s here, Copper River Basin, eastern interior up to the eastern Brooks Range, with 20s for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and 30s above freezing there from Point Lay all the way down to the Aleutians, where you'll be seeing lower 40s for your overnight lows there, especially around Unalaska, 30s for the Panhandle. And then the highs tomorrow, 40s for the southeast coast and the North Gulf Coast, mid to upper 40s, 30s Copper River Basin, 40s for the Mananuska-Susitna Valley areas, as well as Cook Inlet, Tanana Valley, upper 20s to lower, possibly mid 30s. And that temperature pattern all the way up out to the Arctic coast. For flying weather tomorrow morning, we've got IFR developing here, western Prince William Sound, and along the coastal mountains, also the southern slopes of the Alaska Range, lower conditions, as well as out here to the west, and that area extending north there. And again, the upslope areas of the mountainous terrain, the most likely areas you'll see IFR, and of course that'd be along the south side of the Berks Range with marginal VFR all the way out to the coast. Areas of marginal VFR at Chukchi down to Nunivak Island, including St. Lawrence Island, and then a narrow band here of IFR coming in toward the eastern Aleutians and breaking out back to the west. For tomorrow afternoon, not much change here for the North Gulf Coast. That moisture pattern staying pretty well stationary there in southeast flow. So the southern and eastern slopes of the mountainous terrain, that's the best chance. That's where we'll see the lowest conditions tomorrow. And then back out here to the west, an area of IFR extending, looks like right up across the Selawik Valley and Kotzebue. And again, the lowest conditions on the southern slopes, so mostly the western Brooks Range. And that should be, the IFR should be to the west of both the Anatuvik and Atigas. Look for marginal VFR to VFR on the north side. Lake Clark and Merrow, marginal VFR, but the Kuskokwim Valley side entrances will be VFR, same forecast for rainy. And for windy, also the look for marginal VFR, lowest on the southern entrance with better conditions to the north. That same pattern also evident for Isabel, and Mentasta just flat out VFR. Tanita, same forecast, VFR, and for Portage, IFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. For the freezing levels, looking 2,000 feet here, as you can see, all the way up into the Chukchi Sea, and then 4,000 feet down over the eastern Aleutians, and basically 2,000 to 4,000 feet here over the western interior. And then warm air aloft there, upper level high, 6,000 feet up over the northeast interior, sloping down to about 2 to 4 over the Panhandle. Icing areas of light rime here above about 7,000 feet for Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, maybe up to the Alaska Range. And then the bigger areas that storm system comes in could be areas of occasional widespread moderate here with those winds coming across sea terrain there. So the Alaska Peninsula, possibly the eastern Aleutians, otherwise light to isolated moderate. Pribilofs spreading northward just about to the southwest coast. Winds aloft, jet stream, again that upper level high, that's where the freezing levels are the highest tomorrow. Strong jet here across the Pacific, 160 knots, splits right about in this area with one branch heading north, 70, picking up to about 120 knots across the Seward Peninsula, and the other one taking off to the east. Northerlies at about 70, coming down, turning northeast across the Panhandle, and then wrapping back in as it goes around that high center. For 9,000 feet, quite strong winds with that intense storm here moving up toward the Pribilof, 60 to 70 knot west-southwesterlies along the Aleutians, 75 knot northerlies here coming around the western edge of that system, and 60 to 70 knot winds approaching the southwest coast with even 40 knot winds working into the interior. Lighter here, but still picking up about 20 knots, Prince William Sound up across the western Alaska Range. And for the southeast coast, again, light winds, no problems there, really up through the interior. And the strong winds, again, associated with the storm out here, we're looking at westerlies at 3,000 feet up to 75 knots there coming across the eastern Aleutians. 50 to 60 knots south to southeast winds here out ahead of that system, and then gradually diminishing back to 35 knots on out to the west. As far as turbulence goes, severe possible, especially for small aircraft anywhere here in this kind of reddish shaded area there from the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, all of the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, all the way out to Adak, and then moderate chop from there going out to Shimia. Also moderate chop north through the Bering Strait and the western Seward Peninsula. relatively smooth by comparison here over much of the eastern interior as well as the southeast coast. And after the break coming up, I'll return with a look at the marine forecasts.
Another area where the Federal Aviation Administration is using technology in advancing aviation safety is in the use of remote weather cameras as a tool to aid pilots in making safe flight decisions. Hello, I'm Sheila Balistreri.
So in '99, we really started what we currently call the Alaska Weather Camera Program. We say Alaska because it's the only place in the FAA that has this. One, it's available through the internet so that the pilots, their family, their friends, they can all take a look at what the weather's like before you go there. In addition, we have all of that available within all of our flight service stations so that each flight service station technician can call up and look at weather real time. And with that, provide a better briefing, whether it's pre-flight or in-flight for the pilots. By far the most popular thing we've ever done.
The weather camera system has been a good one. I'm sure you can tell from the, if you had access to the number of hits that they get that, on each site, that they're well used, and they save a lot of gasoline, they save a lot of time for passengers out turning around in weather and coming back when a pilot can just look at the camera and make a decision based on that rather than going out and actually looking at the weather.
When we look at the cameras, and if it's a definite no-go situation, then we're not able, we don't send an airplane out to take a look at it and then have to just spend the gas and the time and energy to go out, take a look at it, and just turn around and come back.
By placing weather cameras throughout the state, we've certainly come a long way. Today, we have 55 cameras throughout the state, an investment of $7 million. 12 new sites are scheduled to be up and running by this October. This concept, I think, is stunning in its simplicity. The pilot goes online and can view 2 images for each location. The first shows what the site would look like in a perfectly clear day situation. The second shows current weather conditions. Pilots can now learn what the visibility is in the mountain pass they face and whether they want to fly through it before they take off. In many instances, they may decide not to fly, to hold on that flight for a while, depending upon what they see. And that's long before they set foot in the aircraft.
Alaska is a huge state, and the area covered so far by weather cams is comparatively small. In order for the project to be completed, 165 already identified sites need to be added. In what may be considered counterintuitive, many of these weather cameras are not placed at airports, but are positioned in or near mountain passes and other geographical areas, which are often used by pilots as navigational aids. Others are located at rural airports where there are no weather observers or co-located with automated weather systems. Pilots report that the value in these weather cameras is the real-time information they receive about destination and route conditions. Flight service specialists also have access to the weather camera images and routinely brief pilots with the most up-to-date information before takeoff and during their flight.
We use the weather cams in 2 basic ways here at the flight service station. For self-briefing, to get ready to be able to brief the pilots, to look at the weather cam where we have an airport with a weather report, we can compare what we see on the screen with what the weather report says. Where we do not have weather reports available, then we can look at the camera and again get a picture of what the weather is like at those locations.
When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is pull up the weather cameras to all the destinations in the Southeast and check that against the actual reports at that station, and it gives you a lot better picture of what the weather's doing than what we used to enjoy with just the observation. I'm sure all the pilots are doing the same thing. I know all of our pilots do. A well-placed camera looking in 3 different directions, there's nothing like that. Be able to see in real time what your weather actually looks like before you take off.
Cost benefit is quite a bit. As far as saving us money, we don't launch a flight when we know that the weather is bad. When we can see it on the cameras that the weather is bad at our destination.
When the weather cam system was first proposed, there were some people who doubted its utility, and as they've come online, we've seen how the pilots really like to be able to see those pictures. They value it, and as they become available to us as briefers, we value it too.
I do thank you also for the cameras. I personally have used the cameras. I think that probably the one that's most used is the one over going through the pass into Lake Clark, and from time to time I get calls that it may not be functioning properly, which I'm pleased to say that Mr. Poe responds to very quickly.
During a recent independent study of Alaska pilots who have used the system, 68% reported making decisions to cancel or delay flights based on weather camera information. Pilots also reported that these decisions help them avoid additional fuel costs from flights that must be diverted or repeated due to bad weather. Now, these safety and economic advantages generated more than 2.3 million hits this past year on the FAA's Alaska WeatherCam website.
Welcome back. Light winds, mostly from the north here. Throughout the inside waters, 10 to 15 knots, seas running 2 to 3 feet. Easterlies at 15 here on the south coast with seas 7 feet, and then south to southeast, or east to southeast at 10 to 15 for the north side. And for Monday, we pick up some small craft advisories now here, southeast 20 all along the coastline, but with those seas up to 8 feet. That's why we've got the small crafts out that way. Southeast at about 15 for Clarence Strait, 3-foot seas. Otherwise, mostly north or variable or light to variable, all the way up into northern Lynn Canal with pretty slight seas. Prince William Sound, east 15 more or less, with northeast for northern Cook Inlet. Light winds even south of the Forelands. Light southeasterlies here, 10 to 15 knots for the Barren Islands, but then small craft advisories coming into the picture here as those southeasterlies pick up to 25 across Cook Inlet, or across Kodiak Island and Shelikof Strait. Southeast at about 15 for the North Gulf Coast. And then for Monday, southeasterlies 25 to 30 knots, Kodiak Island, the Barrens, Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories for southern Cook Inlet, and picking up even northern Cook Inlet, east 25 for Prince William Sound, and southeast 25 to 30 for the North Gulf Coast. Out west, Bristol Bay, southeast 45 knots, 12-foot seas. Storm warnings out for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast 50 to 55 knots, seas up to 30 feet there in the Pacific side, and southerly winds increasing to 40 knots from Sitkinak on down to Castle Cape. And then for Monday, got still gales, pretty good gales here for the peninsula, southwest 40 on the Bering Sea side, southeast 30 for Bristol Bay. Lighter winds here from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, those seas still up to 14 feet. And for the Aleutians, Fox Islands, looking like storm warnings tomorrow with 50 to 60 knot winds, seas running 24 to 40 feet. And then we've got hurricane force wind warnings here on the southern side of these zones with pretty good storms on the north side. Seas 37 to as high as 42 feet and 26 to 34 feet on the Bering Sea side, and good gales gradually diminishing as you head west. For Monday, we've still got about the same pattern out here, west 35 to 40 knots, but all westerly now. No hurricane wind warnings, no storm warnings, but good stiff gale here, about 40 knots with 20 to 30 foot seas all the way across the Fox Islands. And the southwest coast, 45 to 50 knot winds tomorrow out of the southeast. East, 50 knots for the Pribilofs. Northeast, 45, St. Matthew Island. And St. Lawrence Island under a gale for a change. And then those come back up to east 35 on Monday. East to southeast, 45 knots here along the southwest coast. Westerlies, 45 knots for the Pribilofs. Seas up to 24 feet. Northeast 35 with 15-foot seas there for the northern Bering Sea. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, easterlies 20 knots, 6 to 12-foot seas. East 15 for the central coast, and then some good gales here. Southeast 35 to 40, Wales up to Cape Beaufort, and small craft advisories. And then for the Monday outlook, easterly winds 25 knots here for the western coast, all the way down there toward the Bering Strait, with seas down to about 5 to 6 feet. But looking at gales here, especially on the far eastern coastline there, 35 knots from the southeast with 14-foot seas. Looking at tonight's forecast chart here, that powerful storm coming into the Aleutians there. High wind warnings out Adak and Atka. Storm warnings out tonight, with hurricane force wind warnings coming in the picture late tonight and tomorrow. Moisture spreading northward here all the way to St. Matthew Island and eastward to the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, staying pretty windy. High wind warning out tonight there from St. Lawrence Island all the way up to the Chukchi Sea, with a high surf advisory as well. Freezing rain over the interior in areas tonight, diminishing by tomorrow, and rain along the North Gulf Coast. And then tomorrow, that front brings the strong winds, heavy rain, or rain, not necessarily heavy, but definitely more of a wind producer than a rain producer, with wind and rain the Alaska Peninsula. Hurricane force wind warnings, high wind warnings out over the central Aleutians. And no change off to the east, with this system staying pretty strong but weakening on.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.